Well, Jim, our next question, sent via the Cult of...
Nobody knows where it originates either.
No, they know where this question originates, in the Cult of Cornette Facebook group by Stephen Ezio Brogan.
Where are these f***ing names coming from?
If Jim had knew... Let me rephrase it. If Jim knew how unhappy Macho Man was on commentary at WWF, would he have went to Rick Rubin and asked him to make a Godfather-style offer to him to be his Flair? So I guess similar to the deal you offered Flair at the start of Smoky Mountain.
Well, no, because... Again, just because Randy Savage wanted to wrestle instead of do commentary in the WWF didn't mean that he wanted to fucking have a goddamn 15-year life reversal and go back to where his dad tried to fucking run 15 years beforehand and they all almost starved to death. No, Savage would have gone to the WWF or the WCW from the WWF no matter what, because he was one of the biggest stars in the business. He still had something to prove, and he wanted to be on national television. The offer that I'd made to Rick was when he didn't plan far ahead of time that he was going to leave WCW. Herd just finally drove him nuts, and he said, fuck it, right? And he quit. And at that point, he had not had any discussions with Vince, didn't know whether he wanted to do that. And he was just bullshitting with me on the phone one day about, well, I might do this or I might do that. And so I'd asked Ruben, and I told Rick, I said, look, if you don't want to go to work for Vince for a year or whatever, you want to take some time, you can go to Japan and they'll pay you 6 figures a year. And I've talked to Rick Rubin. He'll give you $10,000 a piece for one shot a month, wherever we would, TV, Knoxville, whatever the fuck. So you're going to make a couple $100,000 a year, whatever the fuck you do. So think about it. But he didn't want to stay off TV either. National TV, worldwide TV, Flair. So he did, rather than, and I said, you could be in Japan for 10 weeks and work 1 day a month here and make almost as much money as anybody else right now in the business is making anywhere. But, he wanted to go be the WWF champion.
Looking back now, if you had done that deal on Ric Flair in 1992, starting in 92 for at least a year, you had him for 1 date a month, whether it's Knoxville or, like you said, TV or a big show. And for this argument, because this was the question, late 94, same thing. Randy Savage, similar deal. $10,000 a month for 1 year. Looking back now, knowing everything you know and knowing things that were done right, things that were done wrong, things you couldn't control, things that you could control, would either of those things made a big difference, do you think, in business for that year? How do you think that year would have played out in 92 for Flair and 94 to 95 for Savage?
Oh, the one time that we had Randy in Knoxville, it drew very well because Savage was over in Knoxville from the ICW days. And at the same time, he had been one of the biggest stars in the business and people wanted to see him. And he could still work. And remember that night he offered to put Bruiser Bedlam over because he said, I'm not coming back and he's your top heel. He was business minded. I think that Rick in the start would have helped us more with television. Because see, the thing is, when we made the offer to Flair, that would have been pretty much from the start of the promotion. So we weren't even on TV yet. He would have helped.
Well, when you say start of the promotion, you mean the taping at the Bobby Fulton show, or when you...
No, before we were really up and on the air and everything yet. This was the start of 92, right? What time period did he leave and when did he start in WWF?
Flair left WCW, I believe, at the end of spring of 91. He first showed up in WWF. I think he first showed up in either August or September, but the belt showed up obviously before him.
Okay, this was when I was still planning.
Yeah. So he would have been held to that deal for 1 year while you were playing. So, I mean, because it was months before you ran Knoxville, obviously. It was half a year before you even had TV.
Well, but again, that's the thing is it had just happened. So it's going to take him a month or two to do anything, which it took him 3 or 4 months to go up there. But I knew that we were going to do a taping. I knew that he was Rick Rubin's favorite wrestler. And I knew that we were going to, he would obviously be a catalyst for us getting on television, for drawing the houses early on to advertise Ric Flair's part of this. But we had no. That's the thing is Rick would have probably using his name. We could have got better television in the first year, or television easier, perhaps. We could have got maybe sponsors to take a look more closely, and we could have drawn better crowds earlier in Knoxville, or if we'd have put him in Johnson City 1 month, or if we had him tape something for television. But Savage would have been a better benefit to our gates overall because we were up and running for a couple years at that point, and people were already watching the television. It wasn't like a brand new thing. It was starting out where it'd be, oh gosh, there's Ric Flair, and well, there's Cornette, and we recognize a couple other guys. It was more of an established crew. So Savage would have come in as a main event talent in something that was already established. I think he would have probably helped us draw more because of that at that time period.
If you have Ric Flair for the first year and you only have him for, let's say, 1 day a month, do you put the belt on him?
No, because we talked about that. And that's as far as it went. Was again a couple or 3 times when we were both living in Charlotte, and he had called me to write his resignation letter. Remember, I think I've mentioned that before, but I'm the one that actually wrote the letter that he sent into her and said, "Fuck you, I quit." But he wouldn't be the OVW. He wouldn't be the Smoky Mountain champion. He'd be Ric Flair, and we could potentially use some other type, like if he was going to deal with a Japanese group, and we could use some kind of international title to make something even bigger. But no, you wouldn't need to put the belt on Flair, but he would be in the mix in some way with everything. And people on the full-time roster would potentially aspire to get that main event match in Knoxville with Ric Flair. Or if he did come out and say, you know what, Reggie Morton, I took all the fucking skin off of you 7 years ago, and I'm going to do it again. And have that, you could do a variety of things and it wouldn't get old.
Do you think having someone with the level of charisma that Ric Flair had, or had at that time, do you think that would have outweighed the complete lack of charisma from a Tim Horner?
Nothing outweighed the black hole of charisma. He sucked others' charisma in from those around him. Nothing outweighed that.
Well, look, if Ric Flair had decided to leave WCW to go to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, that would have been a gutsy move. If Randy Savage had left Monday Night Raw to go to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, that would have been a gutsy move. To do gutsy things, you need gut health.
Well, and that's the thing is, both of those guys, that's why they were so successful. They had tremendously healthy guts and great gut instincts, and they both ended up doing just fine. While me, I was overeating triple cheeseburgers and had a lousy gut back then. But now, folks, we can all have great guts. Well, you don't have to gut it out anymore in order to get a good gut. All you've got to do is deal with our friends at Seed, because they won't let you go to Seed, because Seed's DS01 Daily Synbiotic is what we've been talking about for I don't know how long now. It's helping everybody. Because, this whole thing is complicated. You need a PhD and a graduate of major universities to be able to figure out all the things that go into good gut health. Your skin alone is home to trillions of microorganisms, which skeeved me out when I heard about this. And then, similarly, your gut has its own little world that it's running down there with trillions of organisms that are all living and working and driving and traveling and fucking and pissing and shitting all in your insides. And you got to make sure to tamp those things down and keep them under control. That's why you get in the habit right now of digesting 2 capsules of Seeds DS01 Daily Synbiotic on an empty stomach, either first thing in the morning or a couple hours after your last meal. I'm not talking again about a last meal of someone who's on death row. I'm talking about for the evening. You take a couple of these Seeds DS01 Synbiotics, and Brian, you know what it does. It supports your gut microbiome. It nurtures your gut-skin axis. It influences diet, stress, exercise, antibiotic usage, all these things. You got to keep control of your gut. These things also aid in the support of healthy blood cholesterol, healthy intestinal recycling of cholesterol and bile. So if you don't get enough recycled bile on this program, folks, then get some from Seeds DS01 Daily Synbiotic. And right now, what you need to do, just go to seed.com, that's SEED.com/drive, and use the code DRIVE. You'll get 30%. That's a whopping discount. 30% off your first month of Seeds DS01 Daily Synbiotic. Have I mentioned that name, Brian? Because it's a brand name now in the industry. It's what everybody's talking about. Seed.com/drive. Use the code DRIVE. 30% off your first month of this essential element of good gut health.
That's right. Seed.
Yes.
Check that out.
Again,
today.
you'll just scream the sponsor.
Want to make sure that we recover a little bit from everything bad you say about them. The last thing
But
they
you know
remember
what
is
they
their
say.
name being yelled at them.
Yes. Hey, Derek. You know what they say? Gut microbes produce metabolic products known as metabolites that facilitate communication between gut cells and immune cells. My Aunt Lola used to say that all the time.